You are on air.
Good evening, everyone. This is Congressman Scott Perry. We're just going to wait for another moment until a few more folks get on the line, and we're going to start the conference. Thanks for holding on for a second here. So good evening, everyone. This is Congressman Perry. We're having a teletown hall meeting, so it's great to know that you're on and interested in what's happening in Washington, D.C. We'll go through some housekeeping notes just before we get started here. If we are taking calls, so if you'd like to ask a question, please press 0. And if I'm not able to get to your question immediately because of the large volume of questions, please make sure you stay on the line, and at the end of the call so we can record your question and I can get back to you as soon as we can. Of course, I regularly do the teletown hall meetings, maybe not always in your area because we spread them around the district, but there'll be other opportunities for you to get updates about what's happening down here in D.C., over the phone. Or you can certainly call in, or if you want to check through email, you could visit our website at perry.house.gov, and you can sign up to receive the e-newsletter, which comes out pretty regularly. So again, if you want to ask a question, just please press 0 now, and we'll get you in the queue. I got a couple poll questions going on now. Hang on a second. Oh, okay. We're only going to do one question now. So the poll question now is how should the U.S. respond to the ongoing situation in Iraq? If you think the U.S. should do nothing, press 1. If you think there should be targeted airstrikes, press 2. And if you think there should be a significant deployment of ground forces, press 3. So that's the poll question for the evening. I'd just like to remind everyone you can contact me by going to the website at www.perry.house.gov. If you want to ask additional questions after the town hall or you need to get some further assistance on a specific issue, please again go to that website, www.perry.house.gov. And of course, you can sign up for the e-newsletter there, and I can update you on a pretty regular basis on what's going on in D.C. We also have Facebook and Twitter. I'd like to recommend that everyone that's interested in that, check that out. We've got the official page. You can receive daily updates about activities in Washington. You can also like, as the term goes, the Facebook page by going to www.facebook.com/RepScottPerry, and you can follow the Twitter page by going to www.twitter.com/RepScottPerry. And now you can also follow on Instagram by going to www.instagram.com/RepScottPerry. And of course, the website is www.perry.house.gov, and you can click on the Facebook or Twitter icons there. Just kind of concluding here with the housekeeping flags. We do have flags that can be requested, and we can have them flown over the Capitol for a particular person or an event or an organization on a specific date. Each flag comes with its own certificate signed by the architect of the Capitol, stating the date and whose honor it was flown. And of course, you can do that on the website, www.perry.house.gov. We also handle Capitol tours for the House or the Senate. Gallery passes are available, and if you wish to arrange a tour of the Capitol, please contact us and indicate the dates you want to be visiting, and you can either do that by calling in or visiting the website. We also, of course, assist with all the federal agencies, regarding the IRS, passport, visas, veterans issues, Medicare, Social Security, military cases, housing, urban development, agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, again, if you want to ask a question, dial 0, and remember we have this poll going on. How should the U.S. respond to the ongoing situation in Iraq? Press 1 if you think the U.S. should do nothing. Press 2 if you think there should be targeted airstrikes, and press 3 if you think there should be a significant deployment of ground forces. So with that, just to pique your interest a little bit, excuse me, we can talk about whatever's on your mind, but looking ahead for the next 6 months, we're looking to, leadership is committed to passing all the appropriations bills. There's 12 of them. I think it's one of the core functions of what the Congress is supposed to do. Of course, this is the House. This is the House side, so we can't guarantee what the Senate will do, but we are committed to passing all 12 of them. We've got 4 done to date. This week we're working on the defense appropriation, and Ag was taken off the table, I guess, for a little more work last week, but I suspect it will be back. We're also looking to fix the transportation trust fund, which is going to run out of money here next month. There was an effort to go to change the 6-day mail situation and use some of that money to fix the transportation trust fund, but I think that issue is now dead. There is also, the Senate just passed a plan today, actually, that would raise the federal gasoline and diesel taxes for the first time in more than 20 years. So that's the Senate's answer to the issue. We'll also be dealing with a couple rules that are out of the White House, the Waters of the U.S. rule and the EPA Clean Air rule. Veterans Affairs will continue working on the VA situation and other issues like the border, of course, Iraq, Benghazi with the special counsel, et cetera. So, we continue to work on our economy too, especially with the contraction of the first quarter. That was somewhat unexpected. We knew the economy wasn't growing that quickly, but I'm not sure any of us thought it might contract, but unfortunately it did. We'd like to see some higher employment, so we're trying to pass some bills. We've been passing bills in the House that we think will affect that positively. I don't think many of them have made it through the Senate or have even been considered by the Senate. So, and they haven't sent too many bills over to us, as far as I know, that to be considered regarding the economy. So we're struggling a little bit with that. We'd like to see a little more production out of the Congress as well, to help some folks get back to work and increase the jobs, the pay of the jobs that we have. So Iraq, of course, is a big issue this week with what's happening there and the money and effort that's been spent, the lives lost over the years, and even considering going back in there. But apparently it's under consideration, thus the poll question. So we're dealing with that. And, of course, if you haven't heard, the literally thousands and tens of thousands of children coming across the border or southern border. So, again, if you have questions, press 0 so that we can get you in the queue. And what I'd like to do is really just quit talking and start answering some of your questions. Is there Claire on the line from Dallastown? Okay, I'm not sure. I understand there's Claire on the line, but we'll see if she's there. Hello, Claire, are you there?
Hello, sir.
Hey,
yes,
how are you?
I am, thank you, sir. Very good, thank you. I would like to ask you about climate change and
yes, ma'am.
what you think of President Obama's carbon dioxide emissions reduction rules.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'm not the biggest fan for a couple reasons. Not the least of which is these regulations were offered as legislation through the Congress on a couple occasions, and couldn't pass and didn't pass even when there was one party in charge of both houses and also with the president. That's number one. Number two, as far as I understand it, these definitions and clarifications didn't pass the Supreme Court either. So for the administration to just unilaterally push them out as a rule seems to be kind of going around the Congress and the will of the people. That's an issue for me. And as well, the regulatory costs right now are about $15,000 per family, which is about, for an average family income, it's about 23%. Listen, we want clean air and we want clean water, but when our economy is contracting, it just doesn't seem like the best time to do something like this. So we would prefer that this would not be the time to do it, and that would not be the method. At least that would be my position on it. I think there are some better things to do, and there's a different time to do it. But right now, I see that as being bad for our economy, bad for jobs, and bad for taxpayers, and for very marginal gains in cleaning up the climate. And that's kind of where I stand on it. I hope that answers your question. I appreciate the call. I'm going to ask the poll question again. The question is, how should the U.S. respond to the ongoing situation in Iraq? Press 1 if you think the U.S. should do nothing. Press 2 if you think there should be targeted airstrikes. Press 3 if you think there should be a significant deployment of ground forces. And again, if you have questions, just press 0. I'm looking for Kirk in Dillsburg. Hello, Kirk. Are you there? Hey,
Yes,
Kirk. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Yourself, Scott?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to at least kind of, get an update as well as
Sure.
then just sort of understand your positioning as well as then where you see things heading with like the legalization of marijuana for the cannabis oil for medicinal purposes in Pennsylvania, as well as then I also had a question that I just remembered, at least in terms of third parties, additional parties into the system, in terms of what are your thoughts and feelings on opening up more towards the way that our system's set up currently, in terms of helping broaden that to have a different representation kind of modeled more on other specific issues as opposed to just the two broader parties.
Yeah, I'll start with the first question last. Thank you very much for the call and the questions, by the way.
Sure.
I think that we should, and I'm not familiar with every state, and of course elections and election law is generally handled state by state, and I do support that. But I know in Pennsylvania that there's a significant discouragement to third-party entry into the discussion and into the electoral politics. I don't see that as really helpful to the discussion. I think it'd be better to have more ideas, and I think it'd be better if we just had literally essentially one set of rules for everybody. Unfortunately, that's not the case. I fought and advocated for changing that when I was in the State House, but I'm no longer there. So, and I don't know that. I'll be truthful. I don't really know if there's any current effort to make any difference in that regard. So that's kind of where that stands. On the cannabidiol or cannabidiol is what it's called. It's an oil extract from the plant, and not to get too technical, but it's high in CBD, which is a component of the plant, and low in THC. What I think listeners need to be aware of is the fact that you cannot get a high. If we're going to use that term, you can't get a high from that because the THC is what creates the high, and these plants are I guess the plant folks, so to speak, they graft different plants together, and they kind of just like breeding, certain breeds of dogs or whatever. They get the plant to a certain percentage of those two different substances. Anyhow, it's got some pretty profound medical advantages, particularly in the epilepsy field and stopping seizures. And I know that the Governor Corbett has recently stated that he would be amenable to that kind of legislation and a plan there. I am actually working on a bill which we plan on introducing very shortly that would do exactly that. I also do want to tell everybody that I do not support the recreational use of marijuana, and my bill would not do that. But what it would allow is for the use for study and for medicinal purpose of the oil extract, again, which is high in CBD and low in THC, prescribed by a doctor if necessary, and but it would allow the states to to go ahead and pursue that effort so there wouldn't be a federal prohibition on the plant that met the standards. Now, it's very strict standards, so not, it doesn't allow for just growing any plant in your backyard or smoking it or anything of that nature, but it does allow for the oil extract, so to speak. It's a great question. I think that that if there's a treatment available to people, and especially their children who are afflicted with this, that we should be able to allow them to avail themselves to it. And currently, the only way to do it is to literally pick up and move to Colorado. I just don't feel that that's appropriate in America, that you would have to relocate for it. So we're hopeful. I think it's going to be an uphill battle, but we're looking forward to educating the public and our colleagues on what this substance can do for folks, and see if we can get some support for it. So we're getting ready to journey down that road. Thanks a lot. Again, for the question. Again, if you have a question, press 0. I'm looking for Sherry from Redline. If you're on the line, Sherry, I'd love to talk to you. Sherry, are you there?
Are you talking to me?
I'm sorry. Is it Bill?
Yes, this is Bill.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got our signal across there.
Yeah, my guy next to me here gave me a wrong name. So
okay.
What's on your mind, Bill?
EPA
has
just came down with some pretty stringent rules for coal-fired power plants.
Right.
I'm wondering, since they're so almost impossible to meet, is this the final say on this? Will Congress have a chance to tone them down to reality? Or is this another shot that Obama sucked through without anybody's say-so but his?
Yeah, well, great question, Bill. Appreciate it. So just to re-inform everyone, again, this is a rule. So this isn't legislation. This isn't coming from Congress. This is coming directly out of the administration via the EPA. And again, the Congress on a couple occasions tried to pass bills or legislation that dealt with this very issue and were unable to reach a consensus even when both houses of Congress were controlled by the same party as the presidency, and also the Supreme Court on several occasions, I think 2 to be exact, also struck this down. So this is unilateral. We are in the comment period right now, where you can make comments on the proposed rule, and then the administration will decide whether they modify the rule or whether they postpone it, or whether they just issue the rule and start making the requirements kind of stick at a date certain. I'm not sure what the future holds for it, and I'm sure that there will be lawsuits. And I am also fairly certain that it will close power plants in Pennsylvania and across the country that just cannot comply or cannot afford to comply, and that's kind of where we are. And again, I think we all want to breathe the cleanest air that we can and drink clean water as well. But as Bill kind of already mentioned, the literal verbiage of this rule says that these companies must get beyond the limit of technology. So currently, technology does not exist to get them to where the rule requires them to be. So it makes it really difficult for them, obviously, to get there. And of course, it's very expensive. And so I think there's a time and a place for everything. But when our economy is actually contracting, I think it's difficult to ask for people to pay more for power, potential have power brownouts or blackouts, and not necessarily be sure that you can actually clean up the air any better. So appreciate the question. It's one that's on a lot of folks' mind. Again, I would just urge you to press 0 if you have a question. I want to do the poll question one more time. I'm going to go to a second poll question now. So the question is, how would you address the ongoing situation regarding the children being abandoned at the American southern border? Press 1 if you think that we should find the child's family and deport the child. Press 2 if you think we should allow the children to remain in the U.S. with relatives. Or press 3 if you think we should make the children U.S. citizens. So again, we're looking for, if you got a question, press 0. I'm looking for Carol from York. Are you there, Carol?
Hello.
Hello, Carol. How are you?
Hello.
Yes,
I'm
Carol,
fine.
This is Scott. Great
My
to talk to you.
question
What's
is,
on your mind?
my question is about the veterans. I want to know why they have to wait to settle the problem, and why can't they get the people that really need it first to get to a regular medical doctor or hospital so they can be taken care of as like right now.
Well, listen, Carol, there's a lot of folks, myself included, that think that that's how it ought to be. And just to kind of refresh, I guess, the VA was originally set up as a special place for our veterans to go, because veterans have very particular issues, and quite honestly, some of them are maybe a little bit sensitive or embarrassing, and they don't want to go to a general hospital and explain, why something happened to them or why they have the situation they do. They felt more comfortable going to a place that was for veterans and many times staffed by veterans. So that's why it was set up. Unfortunately, it has fallen woefully short, and talking to the people in the committee every day when they have hearings, and there's 2 this week, they just keep on finding more and more. Now, we learned recently that you could, the VA, when they went beyond the waiting period that was prescribed, in other words, they were supposed to handle your case within 14 days. That was their standard. If they went beyond that, you were allowed to go to get the care elsewhere, and they could recommend you to go to get the care elsewhere and pay for it. But they weren't telling veterans that. So A, the veteran didn't know it, and B, on occasion, when the veteran did go to get the care elsewhere, the VA wouldn't pay the bill, and then the veteran was stuck for the bill that he or she wasn't expecting to pay. So now the administration has announced that policy. Although I can tell you, I don't think that the VA, I don't think that they're very happy about it. They would like to have all the business come through the VA, and there are some other issues associated with that. I don't know whether you folks know it or not, but there are several hundred people that work at the Veterans Administration that might be clinicians or practitioners. I'm talking about nurses or maybe an audiologist or something like that do no work in treating patients, but work only at 100% of taxpayer funding for the union that represents the employees. That would be one way of fixing the problem, or at least helping to unload the backlog. The other thing that we did pass in the House, and we're right in the middle of it right now, which is the conference report. So a conference report is it's where the House version that gets passed gets put together with the Senate version, and they work out the differences between the 2 versions. We're right in the middle of that right now, where in the past the secretary was not allowed to fire the top level management, or any management really, for doing the wrong thing. Literally, the VA said that they cannot fire these people based on the employment contracts and agreements. So we have passed a bill that says, if you got an administrator who's taking the money that was supposed to go to care and spending it on bonuses for these folks that, are holding up our veterans from getting care, that person can be fired. So we passed that legislation. We do expect the conference report to be something meaningful that we can all get behind and vote for, and we expect it to be signed into law. I hope that's just one of the first steps, because I think that the VA situation goes deeper, and the solutions are going to take more work, but we are kind of getting to it. I would also say, too, in this time of so many executive orders, it seems to me appropriate that this would be within the president's purview, and I don't think he'd get a lot of dissension from the Congress or citizens if he would sign an executive order that could fix the problem. But we haven't seen that. So the Congress is going to do it legislatively. We hope we have his approval, and we hope we can get to it. And we would encourage, too, veterans to be aware that if you don't get the care that you require and desire, and you are beyond the 14-day waiting period, that you are allowed to go get the care elsewhere, and you should request it. And if the VA gives you a problem, we would ask that you call our office, and we could help you work through that. Appreciate the question. It's a great one, and it's one that concerns every single one of us. So, again, dial 0 if you have a question. I'm going to read this poll question again for everybody, if you will respond to the poll if you're interested. How would you address the ongoing situation regarding children being abandoned at the American southern border? Press 1 if you think we should find the child's family and deport them. Press 2 if you think we should allow the children to remain in the U.S. with relatives, or press 3 if you think we should make the children U.S. citizens. All right, I'm looking for Steve in York. Are you on the phone, Steve?
Yes, this is Charles Hoffman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Charles. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead, Charles.
I have a simple question. It seems to me that if you falsify records in the VA case and you receive a bonus, first you've committed committed fraud. You've actually stolen. And if you steal money, you should be fired. You shouldn't have to rely on employment contracts or civil service. You're fired. You did something that's totally illegal. And second, all that money that you've received should be paid back.
Charles, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's going to take some time to get to the bottom of this. And look, I'd like to tell you that I'm confident that there will be accountability regarding these folks, and I do think it is falsifying records. If it's proven, I don't want to say that we know for sure that somebody did something there. It's pretty obvious. So I would hope that they would pursue it. I think it is fraud at that point, especially with the money involved, and there should be reparations in that regard. I will tell you that one of the issues, at least alleged, is that especially for the employees union that's associated with the VA, and I'm not here to disparage VA employees. There's a lot of well-meaning people that serve at the VA because they love the service that they give to members who have citizens who have served their country. But when the union is that powerful that there can be no discipline, then you got to wonder what's the focus of the care. Is the focus on the employee, or is the focus on the care for our veterans? And it seems like it's a little off kilter there when employees can't be disciplined for doing the wrong thing. Now, if the administrators required them to do it as a function of their employment, then I certainly think the administrator needs to be taken to task, and if they've committed fraud, then they need to atone for that as well. And that's the bill that is currently in conference right now, and we expect to pass pretty directly and go to the president's desk for signature. And but ongoing will be the investigation. And I would think that once we can put a name to some of these actions and infractions, that bill, that legislation will be in order, and penalties can be meted out. And that would be my hope, because I think that people, no matter where you work, got to understand that doing the wrong thing is never appropriate or acceptable, and especially in the case of our nation's veterans, where literally people's lives are on the line while they wait. So I appreciate, Charles, your question. I couldn't agree with you more. Again, dial 0 if you have a question. And let me see, who do we have here? Is Steve on the phone? I think I tried to go before.
Yes, Congressman Perry. How are you this evening?
I'm well, Steve. How are you?
I'm excellent. First of all, I want to thank you for your service in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I was a soldier in the first Gulf War in 1990.
I think I recognize the voice.
You do. My question is, here we are again in a quagmire in Iraq, and we have their number one refinery going to be probably taken over in a few days. And now our gas prices are increasing, mysteriously over a 24-hour period of time. But, right. Congressman, my question is, the United States is the number one exporter in oil and gas in the world, and a lot of people don't know that. But why shouldn't we increase our production here at home to make up for one refinery in Iraq?
Steve, first of all, thank you for your service. And listen, I couldn't agree with you more, and it even goes greater than that. I mean, the fact of the matter is, and I think you know this, we really don't have a coherent energy strategy where America literally could, at this very moment, be energy independent of all these nations. Now, it's a world market, and I know you know that as well, but yes, if we could increase our capacity to make up for these nuances and these things that happen overseas, whether it's in South America or in the Middle East, it just benefits Americans across the board. Unfortunately, while we have the reserves, we don't necessarily have the infrastructure capacity. We don't build new refineries in this state or in this country. As a matter of fact, there were 3 that were going to close in Pennsylvania until recently, which, we just don't build new ones. The regulatory environment is too difficult. The tax environment is too difficult. The other thing we don't do is incentivize exploration and growth. I mean, yeah, there's been a lot of drilling, and of course in Pennsylvania as well, but it's all on private lands. So we've asked the administration repeatedly to open up some of the federal lands for drilling and exploration. They refuse to. We've asked to do it off the continental shelf. They've refused to allow that. And not, the other thing is that even in Pennsylvania, we're suffering because we can't get the gold that's beneath our feet to market because we're too slow at the regulations at getting pipelines to our greatest trading partner, which is Canada right now. I mean, I don't know if people realize how much money Canada spends in Pennsylvania, as that's our number one export is gas and oil to Canada, and they would buy more, but we can't get it to them fast enough because we don't have the pipeline capacity to do it. So a coherent energy strategy that considers renewables and fossil fuels is critical, but when we have an ideological bent to only one thing and we refuse to acknowledge the other in the world that we live in, which is a global energy economy, Steve, this is what we have, and it's troublesome to me. I know it's troublesome to you, especially with fuel prices going up. It affects what you do as a family. It affects all our businesses. It affects all our costs. And when people say, well, what do we care what happens in Iraq? Well, if you don't like to see your gas prices go up, we have to care, right? And if we're not going to do something over there, which I'd rather not, but we're not doing anything here either, or anything of substance. So that would be my take on it, Steve. I hope that answers your question. I appreciate the call. Again, press 0 if you have a question. Again, we've got a poll going as well. The question is, how would you address the ongoing situation regarding children being abandoned at the American southern border? If you think we should find the child's family and deport them, press 1. If you think we should allow the children to remain in the U.S. with relatives, press 2. And if you think we should make the children U.S. citizens, press 3. And if you're unaware of what's going on there, I think last year we had about 6,000 children come unaccompanied to the U.S. border, and this year we're expecting 120,000. And if you're not aware of that, I just urge you to go ahead and check it out on the news or call our office, and we'll provide some documentation for you. I'm looking for Don in York. Don, are you on the line?
Yes, Congressman. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
In lieu of the IRS situation there with the emails disappearing and a reluctant Mr. Holder to do anything, I just wonder if the IRS is like that, I can't imagine it's going to be any different with the VA. And if nobody's going to investigate anything and there's no power, then, it seems like the president's taking the power away from the Congress too. So, what are we supposed to do?
Well, listen, we are really disgusted with the news out of the IRS, as well as, at least for me, other things occurring very recently. That situation, I got to tell you, Don, really concerns me from the standpoint. It's always been my understanding that as a tax-paying citizen, you're required to keep your records for 7 years, and if the IRS requests them and you don't have them, they determine what your tax liability is, and you don't have any way to back it up, or you can be fined for not having the documentation to support the tax claim that you've made. And it seems to me that the same set of rules that applies to every citizen, myself included, should absolutely and most importantly apply to the government that's imposing them on us. And the fact that they're telling us that they've lost these emails, I got to tell you, I don't want to go as far as saying that someone's lying, but it seems to me, based on what I know, that even businesses these days are required to keep their email documentation for a certain period of time. And I know when I worked at the State House, every single email, didn't matter whether it was deleted or not, was archived on a server because of Freedom of Information Act requests. And to tell us that the computer of 6 people crashed over that were all involved in the same questioning of where these emails in the White House, if they were involved in this targeting of particular political groups, I'll tell you that is exceptionally concerning to me. That we would think that our federal government would use an instrument of power to intimidate and punish political discourse in our country. That's something from a banana republic. So I don't think we've seen the end of it at all. I know there's legislation for a vote of no confidence in Eric Holder. There's also legislation that would have Eric Holder impeached. I don't know where those things are going, but I think that if he doesn't uphold the standards of the law at this point, that's going to be a reality that faces us at some point. And the House again might have to appoint a special counsel to investigate this because the Attorney General refuses to investigate what clearly seems like what's obvious to most people, which is kind of covering information or hiding information. There's an investigation going on in Oversight and Government Reform. That's the committee that looks at that stuff. But those things seem to take forever, and I think they're tedious. And we saw that with the Benghazi investigation until this special counsel was established. So I hope it doesn't come to that. That's not how our government's supposed to work. We're supposed to be able to trust our top law enforcement official to be blind, with justice and pursue the facts, and it doesn't seem like that's happening on this instance, and we're as disgusted as you are. Appreciate the question. Again, if you do have a question, dial 0. We have a poll running tonight, so the poll question is, how would you address the ongoing situation regarding children being abandoned at the American southern border? Press 1 if you think we should find the child's family and deport the child. Press 2 if you think we should allow the children to remain in the U.S. with relatives, or press 3 if you think we should make the children U.S. citizens. I'm looking for Kathy I guess Kathy's in York. Kathy, are you on?
Hi, Congressman.
Yes, how are you?
I'm calling from New Cumberland.
Oh, okay,
and
great.
And I'm also a vet.
Okay.
And I have gotten great. So I do have to say that now I was in the 60s, but I have gotten great service from the clinic in Camp Hill, and when I've gone down to the Lebanon facility, I have been treated very well. But I'm not coming back from the war with the problems that they have now. But I have 2 questions for you, and I'll try to be short.
Absolutely.
The one was the children coming over the border. I did answer your poll.
Okay.
What did they do with the 6,000 that came over last year?
Well, I guess they do a combination of things. They send them to foster care until they can find the parents. Maybe if they can find the parents readily, they will send some of them back. And I think. I can't be specific in certainly really any number of cases, but there is a process. But when you go from 6,000 to, I think we're above 60 to 90,000 right now, headed to 120,000, they're just completely overwhelmed right now. I don't know if people realize they've taken over Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and they're sending a lot of these children there because they're literally warehousing them while they try and determine a status for them. I mean, the reports from the border agents are if the agent can be identified as a border control agent, instead of running away from the border control agents, these kids and maybe some that aren't so young are running to them with a programmed response of I'm seeking asylum because I'm being persecuted in my own country, and so they know this because then they'll be taken in. I mean, so I think they're being overwhelmed right now.
That's
literally.
Awful.
Yeah, it is awful.
And what I can't understand is why Mexico has always had very strict immigration laws, and all of a sudden they're letting these kids and people come from I can't even say it, from South America and Central America, and they're just sending them through so that we'll take them, and they're bringing diseases. Who knows what's going to happen because of this. And I was watching Glenn Beck last night, and he has a reporter down there and in Texas, and 35,000 came over last month over the Rio Grande. And they're sending them up to Massachusetts in places because they don't have room down there.
Right.
I don't understand that we why can't we just send them back? I mean, maybe not the children, but the people who are coming over from Mexico. Why can't we just say, you're caught, go home? I mean,
well,
I guess I'm simplifying it, but I mean, this is just overwhelming. We have how many people here out of work? And then all these people are coming over, and they're going to get, I mean, the president honored illegal immigrants at the White House yesterday.
Well, listen,
I mean,
it certainly wouldn't be my policy, and I actually think in the long run it would be cheaper to buy them a plane ticket and send them back, but it's hard for us as Americans, I think, to imagine sending your 5-year-old child, to trek, 500, 800, 1,000 miles. A lot of these young people are being trafficked. People pay what they call a coyote, which is a person that puts them in a van or a vehicle and drives them north to the border. So, they get through they bribe the Mexican officials and they get them up to close to the American border and then set them loose. These children are exploited along the way. This is our circumstance, and quite honestly, there's a fair amount of conjecture that this is happening at this rate because of the administration's kind of policy that has been broadcast through Mexico and Central America, that America is not going to enforce its law, and that's why we've seen 6,000 turn into what is predicted to be over 120,000 annually. And, I don't think Mexico is going to help us at this. There's a lot of money to be made, and as long as they're not staying in Mexico, Mexico has much stricter immigration laws than we do. We've got to get our heads and arms wrapped around this thing, but the situation is there are laws in place right now. There are laws in place, but if we're not going to enforce them, and the Border Patrol's been told, you're going to accept these kids. And, literally the Congress was told and the news media was told on many occasions that no pictures were allowed in these places. I mean, the only reason that our attention was drawn to it is Border Patrol agents took photos and sent them out clandestinely. So it's an awful situation. The Congress has acted in the past. We do have laws on the books. We don't have any new current laws, but if we're not going to follow the former laws that are on the books, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference, even acknowledging that our immigration system is broken, which it is. But we have to follow at least the laws that are in place, and that, unfortunately, you can be critical of me, but that's not the job of the Congress. That is the job of the executive, and that's up to the person at the top to enforce, and he's choosing not to do it, it seems. Like at this time. Appreciate the question. Again, if you have a question, dial 0. I'm going to go back to poll question number 1, which is how should the U.S. respond to the ongoing situation in Iraq? If you think the U.S. should do nothing, press 1. If you think there should be targeted airstrikes, press 2. And if you think there should be a significant deployment of ground forces, press 3. Appreciate everybody's involvement. I'm looking for Lee. From York. Are you on the phone, Lee?
Yes, sir. How are you? Thank you for taking my question.
Thank you, sir.
I just have a question for you on this Obamacare thing. Why is it that after it's passed, the Senate and the Congress says we don't have to participate in that? I mean, if I'm making something for the people I represent, I should have to be part of that same health package, I think, as everybody else. I hear my boss complain every day because he pays half of my health insurance, and he complains that every time they hire a new person, it's $10,000. That's his portion.
Right.
But I don't understand why the Senate and the Congress should not be, if they're writing it and it's good enough for the people they're representing, it should also be good enough for them. Or why is that not the case, or is there something I'm missing?
Lee, I love the question because it gives me a great opportunity to explain. So, in the original language, it was not a requirement for the Congress to participate, and it was put in as a Senate amendment that that passed at the time. I wasn't here when that happened, but so just for everybody's listening, just to clarify, the only federal government agency that has to comply with the ACA is the United States Congress, the House, and the Senate. No other federal agency, whether it's the IRS, whether it's OSHA, the Department of Interior, the Post Office, nobody else has to comply at the federal level, but members of Congress and Senate and their staff has to comply with the Affordable Care Act. Now, I will also tell you that we were offered some kind of a way to say that, the employees that work in the congressional office aren't really employees of this congressional office. In other words, they work for the Congress officially or something like that, and they wouldn't have to participate. We did not feel that was appropriate. We felt like that was very disingenuous, and we did not participate in that. So, but I imagine there are certain members or in certain offices that have. I don't really know which ones they are. We kind of mind our own business here, but I can assure you that the Perry Congressional Office, our employees are all subject to the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, and the Congress in general is as well, for better or worse. And I hope that I hope that helps us refine the law, or if it's that awful, if the consensus is we should repeal it and start over again or whatever. I mean, if members of Congress have to suffer under the same weight as everybody else and abide by the same rules, if it's no good, then they would be realizing it just at the same time as everybody else at the same magnitude. So it's a great question. I appreciate the opportunity to explain. Thank you very much, Lee. I'm going to move on again. If you have a question, press 0. I'm looking for Jonathan from York.
It's Jonathan in York. I'm concerned about our crumbling infrastructure, our highways. When I want to know what the federal government can do to help us refurbish basically our bridges.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, I'm told, has more bridges than any other state, and we've heard of interstate bridges collapsing, such as the one over the Skagit River in Washington State, and a few years ago the one in Minneapolis on I-35. So I'll listen to your answer.
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. Great question. And if you don't know, I am a member of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, so I'm pretty well versed on the issue. One of the problems with a contracting economy is we have a highway trust fund. So when you buy a gallon of gasoline or diesel fuel, there's a certain percentage of that goes towards the federal government, and then that goes to fund different infrastructure projects, not only highways and bridges, but also railroads and airports and seaports and those type of things. But highway, infrastructure has a pretty broad definition. But in any case, the problem is that trust fund is unexpectedly running out of money by sometime this summer. And so projects that have a federal component, which is many of the ones around all of our communities, the federal government won't have the money, so they would have to give the state an IOU. Well, it's hard to pay your mortgage or your car, your car loan or your kids' tuition with an IOU. So we are endeavoring to find a way to replenish the Highway Trust Fund. At the same time, we are looking to do long-term legislation. When I say long-term, like a 5 or 6 year bill that would provide some certainty for our road constructors. And, if you live in the 4th Congressional District, you're used to seeing, say like Kinsley or Pensy or Hempt or Wagman Construction. These are all road constructors that operate out of the 4th Congressional District that, operate up and down the eastern seaboard. And even some of the constructors from across the river. I know in particular it's working just outside of New York City. So this is really important to us from an economy standpoint, and it's important to us as Pennsylvanians from an infrastructure standpoint. So we want to get that bill right, but we were working on it. We're just finishing one, which is the Water Resources Development Act, which is kind of the same thing as a surface transportation bill, but deals with our inland waterways and our ports and keeps us competitive globally. From that standpoint, but that was under the same disrepair and in need of attention as much as our roads. So we just finished that, and we started working on the highway bill, unexpecting the trust fund to run out of money this summer. So we're looking for a short-term solution to put some money in the highway trust fund. there was a proposal to end 6-day mail delivery and curb Saturday delivery and take that money and spend it on the Highway Trust Fund, but I don't think that was seen as a viable solution. So the legislators and the committee are going back to the drawing board on that. We're hoping we can do something here so that the appropriate funds come from the federal government to match the funds that you're paying at the state level to make sure that our projects continue to be addressed and that people keep working and staying on the job. So just stay tuned, because I think there will be a solution set in hand. I just can't tell you exactly what it is right now. So thank you very much for the question. And again, if you do have a question, dial 0. All right, I'm looking for Dr. Shah. I think it's Dr. Shah from Dillsburg. Are you on the line?
Hi, actually this is his son. This is Arnie.
Okay, Arnie.
I had a question about gun control.
Okay.
I wanted to hear what your opinion is on gun control and how you plan to keep our schools safe. And I just wanted to start with a quick comment. In 2009, Finland had roughly the same number of guns per person as the United States does, yet in 2009 they only had 5 gun-related homicides. And I was wondering what you think about that.
Well, I can't verify the statistic. It certainly is compelling if it's correct. I would tell you that we have a host of laws on the books, and I think part of the issue is that some of them go unenforced. That having been said, what I think we're looking at, and it's great because it comes from a Pennsylvania legislator, is a mental health bill. Most of these horrific cases that we've seen recently, whether it's Aurora, Colorado, or Sandy Hook up in New England, or a whole host of other ones that have made the news. The one down here at the Navy Yard, there's been a mental health component to it, and we fail to address that in this country. Restricting oftentimes law-abiding citizens from owning and purchasing and owning a firearm, I'm not sure gets to the problem. And in each one of the cases I've cited, every one of those weapons was either purchased lawfully, but somehow ended up in the wrong hands. And I think it's fairly, there's an argument to be made that there was a mental health issue with each one of those issues as well. So we want to try and get to that, and we think that there's some fertile ground there to curb some of these horrifically violent acts using a firearm. We are in a unique situation in America because the right to bear arms is in our Constitution, and of course each one of us takes an oath to uphold and defend that. So, owning a firearm or having a license to have a firearm is not quite the same thing as having a license, to drive, where driving is seen as a privilege. Owning a weapon is a right, and so people are rightly very concerned about the diminution of their rights. And so, one of the things I think we can get to, which will have an impact, is mental health. And we're looking, at least in the House of Representatives, of tackling that, particularly as it relates to gun crime. So the representative that has the bill, if you want to research it, his name is Tim Murphy. I don't remember his district number, but he comes from the Pittsburgh area. If you want to take a look at his legislation. Thanks for the question. I want to go back to poll question 1 here before we run out of time. The question is, how should the U.S. respond to the ongoing situation in Iraq? If you think the U.S. should do nothing, press 1. If you think there should be targeted airstrikes, press 2. And if you think there should be a significant deployment of ground forces, press 3. With that, if you have a question, press 0. I'm looking for Sandy from Dillsburg. If you're on the line, Sandy.
Yes. Hi, Scott. Good evening from Dillsburg. Thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's always kind of when you get these calls, do I really want to listen to this? Because
well, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, I really value our government, even though it still functions as one of the best in the world with all its brokenness. And
right.
Listening to all of the issues that have been put forward tonight, it's just disheartening. And it's becoming more disheartening because there's just so much lack of integrity and values in our government across the board. And I'll just make it quick here. Couple comments and then a question. Recently, I watched an excellent expose on public television by Frontline called The United States of Secrets. with regard to the whole NSA blow-up and Edward Snowden.
Right.
It was extremely thought-provoking. I don't know if you've seen it. If you have not, I really encourage you to take the time to watch it as a United States congressman, and also all the listeners tonight who are listening. I'm still not sure where I'm at with that issue, but in listening to the other conversations tonight, Edward Snowden is a United States citizen. And we've talked about or heard about immigration and gun control and how the United States government itself, Holder, the IRS issue, there are so many issues across the board at a high level where the United States government is just completely functioning in total hypocrisy. And I think it's good to remind ourselves that the country was founded on a band of revolutionaries that said, no taxation without representation.
Right.
And in thinking through that, Edward Snowden didn't have anything to gain by doing this. He knew exactly what it would cost him. And I know it's a hotbed issue. I know there's a lot to understand about it, but I would like to know where you stand on it, because I think the United States owes one of its citizens, just like bringing Bo Bergdahl home, even at the cost that we gave up 5 terrorists.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot to think about in terms of a lack of hypocrisy. And he is one of our citizens. He spoke up against the establishment. And whether he broke a law or not, I haven't determined that in my mind yet, because I don't think the truth has come out. But people at the NSA lied at every level, even under oath.
Yeah. Sandy, I think it's a fabulous question, a fabulous discussion. I just want to let you know I've sponsored a bill called, I think it's H.R. 3756, the NSA Disclosure Act, which requires the NSA to disclose information about its surveillance of American citizens under the FISA. That having been said, in July, I voted for an amendment that would have ended the NSA's bulk and, in my opinion, warrantless collection of domestic phone call information. Unfortunately, the amendment was defeated, I think, by probably only a handful of votes. And I think it should be concerning to all Americans that the NSA claims the authority to collect data on all of our phone calls without a warrant or even the slightest suspicion that you have committed any crime. I think that really flies in the face of what America stands for, and I think Sandy's call reflects that assertion. And I would also say this, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but I find it fascinating that the NSA can know what all our phone calls are and who they're to at what time, and select that information. And we also know that the information in the call, it's not just the phone numbers, but they can go back retroactively and get the content of the call that, for instance, we're on right now. That we can do that, but somehow we've lost, the IRS, the emails at the IRS. I mean, I think that's a fascinating juxtaposition, and it makes it hard for us to have trust and faith in our government, and I think Sandy's comments kind of reflect that. That having been said, let me say this, too, about Mr. Snowden. Of course, the trust issue goes the whole way through, which is part of the problem. Now, I think that revealing what the NSA was doing was an act of a patriot, although I question his methodology. Where I have a trust issue is, and what I can't really be sure of course, is that I've read the classified information regarding the other information that Mr. Snowden took. And I did watch the interview, I think it was with Brian Williams, with Mr. Snowden, and he did not divulge what happened to the 3 laptops and all the information. But unless the federal government is lying to me as well, I read the report, and I can tell you from what I read, I can't tell you what was in it because that is classified, but the metadata, the phone call data regarding our personal phone calls is a very, very, very small, and I said it 3 times for a point, small fraction of the information that he took regarding the federal government and our activities on the electronic front. And while I think I could certainly forgive his patriotism for the first action, if the latter is true in any way, shape, or form, then that's if it's proven to be true, I would see that as treasonous. The problem is that I'm not sure, if my own government's lying to me about the information they gave to me that I read in the secure location that is classified. But if they are being truthful, that certainly, I think, should give everybody pause. So while I agree that the NSA has overreached, that we have been misled, and that our rights are being abridged even at this very moment, I have voted in favor of curbing the NSA. I have offered and sponsored legislation in that regard, and I will continue to do so. I think it's important for us to be a secure nation, but I do not want to give up the rights of law-abiding citizens to ensure that security, especially when we have a pretty good idea of who the perpetrators of crimes and terrorist activities are in this country and abroad. So with that, I guess I've got to end. Listen, I apologize for having to end abruptly, but I guess our call is over. I appreciate everybody's time tonight. Again, please stay on the line, and when we're done, so we can get to your question, you can log your question in, and we can get to your question answered. And of course, you can visit any one of the district officers, or please call or write so that we can answer your questions and handle any problems you have regarding the federal government. Really appreciate serving. Thank you very much. It is the highest honor, and I appreciate your trust to have me be here. And I look forward to seeing you in person as soon as I can. Thank you. Have a great night.